Hey there, I'm going to squeeze in one last video. Thanks very much to my videographer for being so very patient. This has been a very productive day. I've managed to do all of the pleats for this kilt. And in answer to a question that was recently posted, I think it was on my Facebook page, about how I do the hidden pleat on the inner apron. Well, you're about to find out. So I've done my pleats. There, in this case, it was 25 pleats. I reached the last pleat. I'm just going to unpin it so you can see. I reached the last pleat, and I pop out with a measuring tape to see how accurate I was. Now this is supposed to be 22 inches. It is 22 and a quarter, maybe 22 and 3/16, which I think is fine. I think I'm almost an inch over at the waist, 23, but I've got it just over 24. But that's okay, because when we sew in the steeking and then when we press, we're going to lose a little bit at the hip. But in any case, we can afford to be generous by at least, by as much as an inch or a little over an inch at the hip. We need that ease, as it were. So here we are with the last pleat, which I haven't sewn. So I go to the next element of the set. I realize I just made a mistake, so I'm just going to correct this now. So I'm going to fold this to the point on the cloth where I would be bringing it to. If this was carrying on, this was going to be the next pleat. So there's the last element, or sorry, there's the left-hand edge of the final pleat. So I'm going to bring it over to the left-hand, the same point here, right? The cloth is fighting me a little bit because it's falling off the back. Now I'm doing this bit of a hurry. But there we are. And the easy way to tell is when you're pleating to the set, when you pin in position, it should look like the set, right? There shouldn't be any interruption. And I pin it at the top, pull it tight, and then pin it in the middle. Now, my apron is going to be 22 waist, 23 hip. Now, the middle of the front apron is the yellow line, matched by the yellow line, which is in the middle of the back. It's not an ironclad rule, but it's how, pleating to the set is relatively new. It only came out about 120 years ago. It's only been around since about then, because I have a tailor's book from about just before the First World War where they're discussing it like it's something new and wonderful, right? In any case, so the center element of the front apron is book matched to the center element of the back, which is why it's important we have a middle pleat. We have an odd number of pleats, so there's a middle pleat. But on the inside apron, that center feature doesn't have to be the same. It could also be the red line. It doesn't have to be the yellow line. I don't want to lay out the inner apron so that this was the middle. I want it to be symmetric, and I want it to be on one of those two lines, but it doesn't have to be on the yellow line. Right now, let's measure it to the yellow line. Now, 22, so 11, and 23, so 11 and a half. So I pull that over, and I haven't pinned it in place yet, but I pull that over, 2 pins, 3 pins. I pin that. Now, what did I say? 22 inches comes to here. And look, I've got my optimum amount of leftover cloth, which this is inside out, but will be folded, right? It'll be folded the other way, but you get what I'm saying there, to provide a little bit of weight and balance on the inner apron. But on the other hand, this hidden pleat isn't particularly deep. It's okay, right? Because we do see kilts where the inner apron just runs out from under the last pleat, and I hate that. That is, that's shoddy. The kilt doesn't hang as well, it doesn't drape, it doesn't move as well. And frankly, I think it's a nasty little trick to score that extra little bit of cloth, because if you've got a huge roll of cloth in the shop, that amount adds up, and over the length of the cloth, you might squeeze another kilt out of it. But it's a shoddy, nasty little trick that has bad results. So we're not going to do that. So yeah, okay. So there's a little bit, but let's see what happens. That was the center of my apron. Let's see what happens when I move my center to there. In that case, this will be here and there. And now I pin it a second time, rolling the cloth into place. Okay, and that gives me 22. It gives me a good amount, not an optimum amount, but we're only short by a couple of inches. So 22 in this case, that's still enough to have a proper edge, right? And most importantly, critically, our inner apron pleat, the hidden pleat, is now a nice depth. It's about a quarter of the total width. And I've mentioned this elsewhere. I try to get between a quarter and a third, but we're very much at the whim of what the tartan design wants us to, or is telling us to do. And because we want to be sent, we have to work within those rules. So if I don't want it to be shallower, if it has to be deeper, if it has to be unusually deeper, that kind of looks odd to the eye, I would rather have that than otherwise. Now, I'm going to flip this over and show you something else. That when I have seen kilts, so this is there's our inner apron. Hang on, I'm just going to shake this out. Now, this, of course, has to be cut away and everything else. So there we are. There's the last pleat, and here's the apron pleat. I have seen kilts where they do this, where they split the difference and they fold it down. And I get what they're doing. They're creating a box pleat on the inside. I get it. I think it's a good idea. At least I don't think it's an awful idea. It's just not something I choose to do myself. Sometimes when they do this box pleat, it's so wide that some of these pleats are hidden underneath it, and that annoys me because it's difficult to press it afterwards. So this is how I do it. Again, there's my fell, and here's my hidden pleat for the apron, and then of course from here I'll be shaping the outside of that apron according to my chalk mark. So I hope that answers the question. I'm going to quit today, or at least I'm going to stop today, because I've been working 11 hours. I think it's time to refresh myself with a cleansing ale. So be well, be safe, be awesome. Talk to you soon.